Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. Our first hour is general discussion about virtual production and media production. Second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. Today, we're going to talk about Stream Day 2022. That's where we are. And so we'll be talking about that today. We've got a great set of guests who actually worked on Stream Day. John Barker's here, Doug Johnson, and some others are here. So they're going to talk about how they put this thing together. A global event, jumping from one channel to another. So very, very interesting. So we'll have that in the second hour. If you have questions and you're watching on Mukana, go ahead and throw those questions in right now. And let's go ahead and jump into the questions. Mitchell, take it away.
Thank you, Alex. Appreciate it. First question comes to us from Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida. He wants to know any rumors about the features that will be added with the Zoom ISO update this summer.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Sorry, I didn't raise my hand on that, but
oh, interesting. I see it there anyway. Yeah, so I think that what we're going to see is a trajectory. I mean, I don't have anything to report on the rumors, but I do think that we're going to see a trajectory of a much more broadcast oriented Zoom, that is really built both around events and about integrating into a larger pipeline. And I'm just guessing that because they bought Liminal, so that's what you would get. You have a company that has specialized in that for quite some time. And so I'm pretty excited about the summer. I'm pretty excited to see, what they come up with there. I think that there's a lot of places where they can add, utility from Zoom ISO as well as Zoom OSC. And I think that is a really critical component, is the fact that we're sending you a bunch of ISO feeds and we know who is in each ISO feed, is a really interesting thing when it comes to scale. And so, but I think that we'll probably find out more in June and probably throughout the summer. It's taken them it takes a little while once you absorb a company to have any result. Usually it takes years. Like in most companies, you buy a company. So hopefully we're going to see something a little bit faster than that. But I think that it's going to be a pretty interesting summer and fall. All right, next question.
We have a couple of people popped in there. Chris Fenwick.
I'm not seeing it. Hold on. I'm in the wrong section there. What? We're happy now.
Okay, let's jump back to that question so that we can get some answers on if we can.
Yeah, there is a... looks like we've got a bunch of answers that got jumped around here. Hold on.
Jesse and Chris were standing by to
something
answer.
Just got on my end. Something got flipped. Sorry about that, everybody. Go ahead, Chris.
Muted.
All right. I was going to say, and this is all hearsay, but we know that prior to the acquisition of Liminal, Mr. Carluccio kept saying, ISO audio on its way. And then he said, well, it's a little bit more difficult and I'm trying to get some help inside of Zoom. And then Liminal got purchased. So I'm really hoping to see ISO audio on the ISO outputs of Zoom ISO.
Yeah, I think that ISO audio would be revolutionary. I mean, just being able to get Zoom outs and eventually Zoom returns. I mean, Zoom outs would be, ISO out would be amazing. But I think that as that progresses, if we're able to get ISO audio, that's a big reason we use so many computers on our end in Zoom rooms, so that we have ISO audio from each person. Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have any insiders information either, but ISO audio, maybe Windows compatibility would be lovely. But yeah, these are the things that Andy has said, as Chris just mentioned, that were really hard, and hopefully he has the support there. And tighter Zoom integration might be nice as well. Although it's pretty streamlined as is.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be. I think a lot of us feel like Zoom is going to start pulling away from everybody else because of Liminal. So we'll see what happens this summer. Next question.
Jacob Goodnight, and he's from Indianapolis, Indiana, and he wants to know thoughts on using a USB condenser mic, a Blue Yeti, as part of a remote virtual presenter kit.
Go ahead, Bill.
So condensers as a class of mics generally are more sensitive than dynamics. Those are the two major divisions. So dynamics don't have any power that needs to be going into them. They simply turn the vibrations of the capsule into a small electrical current, which is then amplified. Condensers, on the other hand, use a charged field to hold the diaphragm, and as such, they tend to have two characteristics. They are far more sensitive, and they have a much higher output level. So if you're in a noisy environment, sometimes a condenser mic can be a bit of a challenge. In fact, if you hear us talk about our mics, some of the people here on the panel use condensers. In almost all cases, unless we're doing our show from a voice booth or something like that, you have to have either some noise assist or you have to have treated your space very carefully to make sure there's not a lot of attendant noise, because even things like computer fans in the presence of a condenser mic will infect your signal and make it harder for people to understand what you're saying. So the whole bottom line of this is they're great. The Blue Yeti is a very popular one, a relatively affordable one compared to some other condenser mics, but it needs to be treated with respect in terms of the place that you're going to be using it, or you can find yourself with more problems than they're worth. People on the show tend to split. There are a lot of people with like the large diaphragm dynamics, and there are some of us who use condensers, and it just depends on how much effort you want to put on the back end.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, 8 times out of 10, I see people with Yetis doing this, which is talking into the end of a mic, whereas the Yeti is actually a side address microphone. So I created a graphic that I send out to people that are using it to say, this is how you should orient that mic. This is not a Yeti right here, but also there are different patterns on the back of it, so you have to make sure you've had the correct pattern selected on the mic and really have it fairly close. So it's possible with some instruction.
Go ahead, Chris.
Bill sounded like Bill Nye Science Guy there. So in layman's terms, laptop mic is way down here. Blue Yeti is good. There's better things, but it's cheap. I recently did a bunch of recordings with a producer who really, her answer to everything was like, I'm just going to send you a Blue Yeti. And she was just Amazoning mics out to record talent like crazy. And it's okay. It's an okay mic.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I agree with Chris. It's okay. What I don't like about the Blue Yeti is its suspension. It sits on your desk. It doesn't have any sound isolation, so if you're going to be tapping on your desk or moving things around, you kind of hear it. I kind of prefer the Audio Technica in that price range. The AT2020 USB. You can put it in a spider shock mount and isolate it. It also has headphones out, so a USB mic, condenser mic like that is kind of good for a setup where they don't have a mixer or anything to plug it into. Since it has audio return and you can plug headphones into it and hear immediate feedback into the headphones without any delay. So you hear the microphone in the headphones, and you also hear they return from your USB. So any Zoom call that you have hooked up, you can hear it through the interface in the microphone itself.
Yeah, and we've really started to standardize around these Sures. So these are the MV7s. These are a little bit more expensive. I think they look nicer. I think they sound nicer. They have a standard mic mount and relatively durable, although they scratch really easily. So be careful of that. So anyway, but I think we've been testing these, and we think that these are probably going to be something that we end up with a bunch of, because they're USB or XLR. I don't want to buy a USB only mic because I want to be able to, like, so we have an event on Monday, and we were planning to have folks in their own room, but they decided that they want to be, together, and for 2 of our guests, and I now have to change the audio pipeline. And so I have to go from 2 USB connections to 2 XLR connections into a mixer. And I would have had to figure out what mics I was going to use, but I don't have to because I can just swap it. So I think that is I think that the MV7s are the big winners for me. I have to admit that I don't like the form factor of the Yeti. I have bought maybe 100 Yetis, so it's not like I don't know it. We used to use it as our thing. We found that there was a lot of confusion, people getting the polar patterns wrong. And there was just a lot of stuff that we had with it that we over time decided we didn't want to use it anymore. So we were kind of on a search for one, and I think from a simplicity and quality perspective, we've kind of started to center around the MV7. I also got the Earthworks that David Brady recommended. It's a little too bling for me to use to send out, but it's pretty. It's really pretty. Anyway, so we'll test that, do head-to-heads with those a little later. Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer from Vieira, Florida. Is there a virtual production trade show?
So we've seen them. I've actually been part of a couple trade shows that or things that are like trade shows there. And what they did, they didn't use anything fancy. They just used Zoom rooms. So basically what happened is that they had a bunch of presentations and it worked exceptionally well. It just let everyone walk around and from one room to another. And there was someone in there talking, like they're talking about their product and they've got it set up and you walk in like you'd walk up to a booth and they're talking to a bunch of other people and you just listen to them and ask your questions and move forward. And it was, I was surprised at how well it worked. I was like, oh, this is going to be a disaster. And it was, it actually worked really well. Like I just felt like, oh, I want to go to something else. In fact, it was nicer. I have to admit that by the end, I was like, I'd really prefer this over a regular exposition hall because there's no walking. Like I didn't have to walk anywhere. I just was like, I want to go to this other booth. And I just went to another booth. And so I was able to kind of hang out and listen to other people talk and then ask questions. And so I, the only problem with it is that you go to a booth, you have 12 people or 15 people answering questions. Here you had one, like one person that's showing you the advantage is that what the real challenge, what looked to me, and again, I was just watching, the challenge is different vendors spending different amounts of money on their setup. So there was like four vendors that had they had obviously spent money. Like on their they had spent their booth money on their setup, on their studio. And so they had multiple cameras and it looked really good. I don't know what they were using, like A7Ss or something like that. It looked really nice and great mics and everything else. And then you just were sucked in. And then there are people like with webcams, that were just holding things up and talking to you. And I think as a trade show, I would require people to get through some kind of quality assurance before they went into it. So for the folks who invested in it, I really felt like I was looking at the future. For the folks that didn't invest in it, I thought, oh, this is going to be horrible and no one will ever want to do this again. So I think that it's just a matter of pushing it forward, but it's awesome. Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, Alex, where did you say this was? Vegas?
It was online. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
A virtual trade show?
A virtual trade show.
Virtually?
A virtual, there was no Vegas involved. There was no, and so, yeah. And I think that it really had, it was one of those kind of one of those bricks in the wall for me. Like when you see it, you're just like, oh yeah, this is the future. Yeah, go ahead, Sky.
Well, as you were saying that, I was realizing, but wait, you have to wait in the taxi line. You have to wait in the bus line. You have to pay $12 for a bad piece of pizza.
Yeah. And then there were a whole bunch of rooms that were just for people to hang out. So people were just able
that
to
was
wander,
the question.
wander out.
I often would in the bus. I would say, hey, what did you see?
It was like the blue room and the red room and the green room and all these other rooms that you could go into, and there would just be people hanging out.
And you would just chat, just interact.
Chat. Yeah, people were just chatting.
See, that's what I did like about the bus line.
I didn't chat at all. I wasn't supposed to be there. I was asked for a friend. That's why I'm not going to tell you what it is. So anyway, but it was cool stuff.
How many breakout rooms can you have in I don't know what that limit is.
I don't know what that limit is either. This one had, I'm pretty sure at least 10, because it was it was a little show. So it wasn't like it was like hundreds of booths or anything else, but we'd have to figure out how many booths you could. I mean, it was more than 10 because I remember it was a confusing number of rooms, but I don't know what the limit is, the upper limit of the rooms are. It's good. It's a good question. Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer from Vieira, Florida. And his question is, I will be meeting with Wirecast product management next week. Any comments for improvement?
I'll go ahead, John.
Where do I start? I've been using Wirecast like Jeffrey since version 4.0, PC and Mac both. And it used to be stable until like version 12. Version 12 through, and then a couple days ago, I just loaded 15 and I let it run because from 12 through 14, it would crash about every 15, 20 minutes. The other problem I have with Wirecast is super CPU intensive comparatively to vMix or some of the other software-based switchers. So hopefully they're getting better. I used to love the product. Now I'm not a fan.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I'll echo exactly what John just mentioned. It's stability as well as GPU usage. A lot of us are starting to use these Epiphan pearls as a transport mechanism to get a video signal into the cloud. And so running Wirecast, just because I already own a license, one of the things that I need is SRT input. So Andy, if you're talking to the product manager, there's already 45 upvotes in their forums to get SRT ingest. So until then, vMix kicks their butt.
Go ahead, Chris.
50. The answer is 50 breakout rooms.
Yeah, I was gonna. That's good. I was gonna say the same thing. And there's a rumor that if you ask nicely, you can get more. So it's you can put a lot in there. Yeah. So the as far as Wirecast goes, stability. I mean, I built the foundation of my company was built on Wirecast. Like my last company. I mean, we streamed on Wirecast for a while until we bought Elementals. But before that, it was all Wirecast. It was first Flash Media Encoder, and then Wirecast. And the problem is we'd have little things like if you pull the headphone jack out of a computer while it's streaming, it will lose sync. And that was in 2008. So not that I'm still the scars are pretty deep. So anyway, I think stability and reliability are the biggest things that Wirecast. I feel like they just need to not add any more features. Just get the features that they have working would be excellent. Next question.
Juan C. Robles from Mexico City, Mexico. Yesterday morning, I found this 3D printer, and it looks amazing. There's a link to it.
Go ahead, Todd.
So I have a Prusa Mark III with the MMU, and I was really frustrated that I missed the 3D print conversation because I probably had things I could have added. But that is about the same price as this, and it's known technology. I'm a little wonky about Kickstarters. It looks like an interesting 3D printer, but I'd sure look at the Prusa Mark III with an MMU.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, it looks interesting. I'm not sure exactly what the price is because it's a Kickstarter. Anytime a printer tells me it does multiple colors and automatic color switching, you always have to take that with a grain of salt because in the FDM printers, you'd like to think that it can just switch colors from one to the other and then go on printing, but no, you have to build this purge tower and it has to purge the previous color for a period of time, and the purge tower ends up being probably more material than the object that you're printing in multiple colors. So it's not a real good solution, although they have a means of switching between, I think, 4 different filaments. And it takes care of that. It sounds like also they say it has a lot of LiDAR and AI built in to detect failed prints. So if you get spaghetti on your bed, it will let you know that your print has failed, or it can measure the depth of the each layer with LiDAR. So it sounds to me like they're taking the camera head out of an iPhone and sticking it in there and using the AI chipset from the iPhone to use the LiDAR and detect bad prints. Other than that, it seems pretty much like every other XY axis a non-bed slinger type of 3D printer.
Next question.
The Seventh Scroll in Brooklyn, New York. Morning, guys. We're long overdue a pro upgrade for our Movo WMX20 mics. We looked at the Sony UWP-D series, but unsure if it's the best buy once, cry once. Best buy once, cry once option for Zoom health classes, interviews, etc. All recommendations and tips are greatly appreciated.
Go ahead, Doug.
In terms of the mics that are under $1,000, the UWP-D are actually pretty hard to beat. There are better mics if you're willing to spend more, but in terms of anything under $1,000, those have been the best that I've used. They do have true diversity on them, and they have this really cool system of handling the companding, which is compression and decompression that's going on compared to everything else. So the noise artifacts from that compression is a lot lower on those than others. The other big advantage you get with the UWP-D is that if you happen to have Sony cameras, your camcorder or the mirrorless, you can do a direct connection into the body without having to have any cables, just with a little sling adapter that you stick on top of the camera. It's really convenient, really cool. So yeah, under $1,000, they're really hard to beat.
Go, Jesse.
Well, if you're living in and working in New York City in that area, you might have a problem with buying cheaper wireless systems, especially if you're moving around the city. So you may have to Cry once in a sort of higher end, actual, professional level system that's digital wireless, like Electrosonics or WizzyCom or Zaxcom. And the other nice thing about those is they're encrypted. But the thing is, if you're working in the city, you might always have a wired backup because it's really, really busy in the RF spectrum.
We haven't. I think it depends on where you're at. Definitely, especially if you're where your buildings are and how high they are and so on and so forth. We've had very little issues, but I guess we generally we use Axient for most of what we're doing. So, but it hasn't been a real thought process there. Other things to look at if you're looking at. I think that Doug's right under that price and the price point. I think those are probably some of the best transceivers that you can get. Sennheisers also have some pretty strong, obviously some strong stuff there that you can look at. Over that, as far as depending on who you have working on it, I will say that for the kind of things you're listing, health classes and interviews and so on and so forth, I would take a look at the Shure Microflexes because they're just really easy to administer. They're just super easy to just kind of turn on. They're a lot more expensive than $1,000 per piece, but it is when it comes to working with a bunch of people who are not necessarily as technical, and I don't know what your situation is, being able to just set them down and reset them and then pick them up and have them all run on Dante and everything else is a pretty good time. And the only time we've seen issues is when you're near the Plantronics headquarters. They don't work very well because they both sit on the same platform. All right, next question.
Jacob Goodnight from Indianapolis, Indiana. What gear would be in your ideal virtual presenter kit?
I think we'll have to take the infamous "it depends," like for this, because it depends on how big or small you want your kit to be. The largest kits that we've built, we have a bunch of kits that are 6Ks with ICANN teleprompters, larger tripods, two Nanlite 68Bs, a Mac Mini, an ATEM Mini, MixPre, all put into a little brain that sits there, and you just kind of set it up to make that work. And so we those are the kind of the largest ones we do. The smallest ones we do are an MV7. And a little light. So and it depends on how much weight we want to put on the end user. We do send out also Mac Minis with some lights. I like the 68Bs from the Nanlite 68Bs for lights because I can adjust the color. They're a relatively large surface to work with, and they're relatively inexpensive to run. When they get smaller than that, we do send out the 6Cs as well. And when they get smaller than that, they can get a little pointy. So that's something that we kind of have to kind of work through there. Always remember to send people, if you can, some kind of earpiece. So, because having an extension. So we have this little 3-foot extension. Otherwise, everyone's pulled up against the system. So it's one of those little things people forget. And you definitely want to send headphones out for people. You cannot have full duplex Zoom calls without everybody being on headset. So it's when they're using the echo cancellation, it kind of ruins it for everyone. Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, and 50 to 100 foot Ethernet cable. I'm not sure if you mentioned that, but one thing that popped into my mind when the question was asked about ideal virtual kit, what about a gear or a servo motor that you send somebody a package and it sort of unfolds with the correct positioning of your lights and microphone and camera and all that stuff? That would be cool.
There's a company that does something very, very similar to that. You open it up and it does. It's like I can't remember what it's called, but they have all box. The problem really is with it is number one is the lights are really close to the camera, so it's just very spotty looking. You can't get the lights away from the cameras. A lot of times we want to get them away from the camera. Secondly, it's actually difficult to figure out where to put it. So we still use a tripod because we want to try, we can put it anywhere. The problem is now you have a box that has everything and you got to find the table to put it on. And so that becomes like its own problem when you send it to somebody, unless it can hold, the box can be held by a big tripod, and that would be difficult. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, the thing you're thinking of was called Crew in a Box.
Yeah.
Crew in a Box, and it does fold out. It does, of the ones that are out there, it does have at least broader lighting than most of the others do. A lot of the ones I've seen are just like a handheld the size of an old Macintosh SE30 that have like two little LED strip lights to light up your face, and it's completely inefficient.
Yeah, the other thing is I think it also does a shotgun mic. I don't think it does a lav mic or anything else. It's designed so the person doesn't have to touch it or work with it or whatever. The problem is that shotgun mics in an average house are just a disaster. Like all you have to do is look at what was it? Was it the Oscars a couple of years ago? Was it Oscars or the Emmys or whatever? Wow, what a train wreck! It was a train wreck of it, and they spent so much money, and they showed all this behind the scenes. And when you actually watch the show, it was I found it to be like I just wanted them to get on to the next person because the echo and the lighting was so bad that I was just like, oh, let's just move on. Go ahead, Bill.
I kind of think about it like lawnmowers in this respect. You can get those tools that are the homeowners. It does everything. Yes, it's a lawnmower, but it also has a little rake and a little add-on that you can do for aerating the lawn and all this stuff. And it does all of them modestly and not very well. You will never find a serious landscaper who has one of those. They always have bespoke tools for things. And in setting up a really good telepresence, you want control over every aspect, not just the ones that the box does well. They're fine as a startup, and I can see a lot of homeowners wanting those multi-tools that just, hang it in the garage and then take it out when you have little jobs and put it away. But if you're serious about your business, you're going to look very deeply at each individual aspect, and you want more light control than that has, more sound control that has, and the rest of those things.
Yeah, with the bigger kits that we have, we can log into them remotely, run the camera, run the start and stop the records, all of those things, and it makes a big difference there. But again, what really does make a difference is we send out for the smaller kits that we have, we send a Mac Mini with it that we can remote into. And so, and the big advantage there is that we can remote into that, and then the user doesn't have to know anything. Like they just, open it up, follow the instructions, and then we take over and run everything that needs to be run to get it to work. And if you're, dealing with tractors, of course, don't get any of the newfangled stuff. Stick with the Farmall A. Next question.
Juan C. Robles from Mexico City, Mexico. WWDC 22 Digital Lounge's registration is open. Is there any interest in a particular topic?
AR. So I'm really interested in AR. So I'm really curious to see what they do as far as the upgrades there. Go ahead, Bill.
I looked through the whole list because there's so many areas I don't know they're investigating. And this does provide you a little clue into what Apple's interested in. I mean, the number of Swift programming related things 3 or 4 years ago told me that they were very serious about that migration into Swift as a user programming language. And they were really interested in getting into the schools and kind of building on that. So looking across the broad spectrum of what they offer gives you a hint into what Apple's thinking is for the future, and I find that very valuable.
Next question.
And it's from Todd Davis in Hutchinson, Kansas. I learn a lot from Alexisms, such as luck equal preparation plus opportunity. What are the phrases or mottos panelists live by?
I will say that's not an Alexism either. It's a well-known quote. I quoted it. I don't want to take credit for something that has probably been around for a long time. Go ahead, Courtney.
I always abide by Murphy's Laws, and a few of Murphy's well-known laws are nothing as easy as it looks. Everything takes longer than you think. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And one of my favorites, was whenever you set out to do something, something else must be done first. And it's impossible to make anything foolproof because fools are so ingenious.
And I believe that the actual Murphy's Law is anything that can happen will happen. I think
anything that can go wrong will go wrong.
No, not go wrong, but anything that can happen will happen, not anything that can go wrong. It's a minor change, but it was someone corrected me.
It's more not positive attitude. Murphy's
someone
Law.
said that's the real Murphy's Law, and I don't know what's true.
I love the law of selective gravitation also, that a dropped tool will always fall where it'll do the most harm,
which is so true. Go ahead, Todd.
So I'm a big fan of Maya Angelou's people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you make them feel. Yeah. And that's kind of the take that I get from this group is that, yeah, we can say stuff, but when you actually make somebody feel something, that's when it really sticks, when it's really, really deep or whatever. So that, I was kind of actually trying to be a little more serious.
That's great.
But that's something I try to live by.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I've got two. One is when you're setting a shot up, Let's Shoot It Before We Hate It. That's one of my favorites. And the other one is You Never Finish a Production, You Just Abandon It.
Good, Sky.
Art. That's why I heard that phrase, Mitchell, was art is never finished. But my isms would be time, quality, and resources, which tags right in behind all things are possible with time and money, oftentimes. Then my go-to is who's your audience? What do you want them to do? Because once you kind of understand those two things, the hows of getting the information from your brain to their brain, or the client's brain to the audience's brain, those are just details.
Good, Bill, real quick.
And I had on the wall in front of me when I wrote the column for 10 years, the Blaise Pascal reduction of, I would have written you a shorter letter if I had more time, that writing concisely is difficult.
The one that I generally have up a lot is from General Omar Bradley, and it says, amateurs talk about strategy and professionals talk about logistics. Next question.
Kenny Hampton from Greenville, Illinois. MIDI, the late Dave Smith helped create, remains a key tool in music production after nearly 40 years. How has MIDI evolved since 1983 that we still find it a fixture in audio and video control equipment yet today?
You know, there's a fascinating interview. I was researching this earlier this morning, and there is a fascinating interview with him, with David Smith, talking about it's in the Electronic Music Archive or something. And he talks about and I think it's so powerful. He talks about they got together at NAMM's tomorrow or today, and they said in 1983 or 1982 or something like that. And he said, okay, this is what we have. We got to do something here. We got to be able to talk to each other and have all this stuff work. And he said that a lot of the American companies, the Synclaviers or a lot of the other European American companies, were all like, it has to have this, and it has to be really, and it had to be huge, and it had to be super powerful, and it had to carry all this data. And they just couldn't find a middle ground of where to go. And they couldn't find the concept of compromise of how do we get this to work in a way that will actually come out the other end. And he said after the meeting, he thought it wasn't going to work. And then these two Japanese companies came over and said, yeah, we'd like to talk to you about that. Those are Roland and Yamaha. And so they came over and they wanted to, he said, we met him over at the booth, and we started building it. And we couldn't have everything. And he said there were things that we wanted that we didn't want to tell them why we needed it, because, so you're trying to insert protocols into it without it. And it's a really fascinating interview about and it is, I mean, now that I'm doing lots and lots of music stuff, you just really get the pervasiveness of MIDI and how it's just such a powerful tool. And part of what makes it powerful and why it's lasted so long is because it's so simple. It isn't complicated, and it just does the thing it needs to do, and everything is based on it. Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, totally. And it's also incorporated into a lot of audio interfaces nowadays over the USB bus. But, MIDI is also starting to be, more and more used through OSC because OSC can include MIDI, and it actually has better timing than MIDI, but it requires a software application to integrate that. But yeah, if something's just like a keyboard or a musical instrument or something like that it just needs those note value and control change information, you'll still see that MIDI port on the back of it. And I don't think it's going away for better or worse.
Well, yeah, and it's just been updated. MIDI 2.0 allows two-way communication, which was a big deal for what they were doing there. And it is amazing. If you ever think of a song that you want to figure out, and you can probably find a MIDI version of that song. Like if you just search the song MIDI, you will find a MIDI version of it. You'll drag it into Logic or whatever you're working with, and there it is. There's the song, and it's a fascinating thing to see what's possible there. There's a relatively well-known Mbira tune, Nimasasa, and that I like a lot. And I was like, I wonder if there's a MIDI version of it. Sure enough, like it's an Mbira tune. It was written 1,000 years ago in Zimbabwe, and there it is. In MIDI, and then you can give it different. I wonder what this would sound like with different instruments, and it's just I just find it to be an amazing treasure trove of music. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, one of the things that fascinated me with an announcement for NAMM is that at the show they'll be demonstrating PTZ optics control of cameras via MIDI. So some of these controllers are super cheap, and being able to get that kind of control for under $100 is amazing. Pan, tilt, and zoom.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, it's a powerful protocol, and again, partially because it didn't try to do more than it did. Next question.
Here's Douglas Carmichael with a question. Director Brad Fuller says supersonic travel would change the industry and make production on large-scale projects more efficient. With tools like Frame.io and LucidLink, along with Belfast Mobley-style workflows, could travel needs be reduced?
Go ahead, Bill.
Maybe, and some of them sometimes. I will say that production is a team sport. So the fact that maybe a few people, particularly the higher ups, can kind of dial into a production and make decisions and help is certainly possible. But there are certain things on a set. I mean, what are you going to do about props? What are you going to do about hair and makeup? What are you going to do about all the things that literally you need to be physically present at the point of shooting to do? And even if you decide you're not going to go with the Technicrane, which requires 3 people, and you're going to do that shot with a drone that requires 1 operator, that operator still has to be there to see it going on, at least for now.
I thought it was all going to be green screen and Unreal.
Yeah, famous last words. But that's the other part of what I was going to say. Also, sets are fun. I mean, I'd never forget the first time that I had enough of a budget. We were doing dog food and we wanted to talk about nature because it was natural ingredients. So we got a mobile home and we went up to Woods Canyon Lake, which is this beautiful place in Arizona. And just being in that environment to shoot that spot and make the product look as beautiful as possible in the natural environment was glorious. And we were able to sleep overnight in the mobile home, and it was just a fun thing. Sometimes production is like that, and I don't think anybody wants to miss that.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, the problem with supersonic travel changing the industry means you would have to fly everyone to a great location. And with supersonic travel, there's a lot of things you can't fly over because of the sonic boom. And so you'd be very limited in the number of locations you could go to that could handle landing a supersonic aircraft of some sort. Also, if you're talking about doing virtual replacing, regular production, actors always like to be in the same room with the actors they're acting opposite. It just doesn't work very well doing a love scene virtually, or even a murder scene where you're having to physically interact with the other actor. Martial arts scenes, very difficult to do virtually.
I mean, even talking scenes. We've done some. I worked on a film where we couldn't get the schedules to line up, so we'd have the double, on the other. So the over the shoulder shot was a double of that person, and then the interior shot was and we shot them like weeks apart, and it was always fine. But if when you knew which one there was, you were kind of like, oh, we lost a little there to make that work. I think that. I don't know how supersonic travel is going to change anything in our lifetime. From a production perspective, I can imagine a producer talking about paying for the crew to fly supersonic. Trying to get that past budget would be exciting. I don't think I don't think that would go very far. I also think that for the actors, I mean, they're flying in on G5s. They don't the time it takes to get from one place to the other is not really as important to them. It's a pretty nice plane. Next question.
Yeah, it's a question for me. My DirecTV receiver occasionally throws a handshaking error with my Sony TV. Is there a good EDID ghost device I can use to eliminate this recurring HDMI problem?
I go with Courtney.
Yeah, Geffen makes one. Sorry I didn't get it into graphics in time, but this is what it looks like. The HDMI Detective Plus. And it's designed specifically for your problem there. It detects the EDIDs, and it generates a consistent EDID that your TiVo is looking for out of your Sony TV, and will keep it consistent even if the TV or the TiVo suddenly blanks or changes channels or tries to reinitiate a handshake. It will answer the handshake instead of the TV, and it'll intercept it.
And sorry, go ahead, Mitchell. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And I just wanted to give a little more background of what all that magic is about, is that when you have handshaking, which is usually some type of copyright, the TV is the sink, and the originating device is the one putting out the handshake request. If you place a sync in ahead of your TV or your receiver, and it has that EDID code stored in it, the device initiating the handshake thinks that it's connected to a great device and makes the switch a lot quicker. But I'm just shopping for the right device. I know that theoretically what the problem is. I just want to get the right device to place there.
Next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael again. What does the panel think of AI-assisted channel strip plugins like Isotope Neutron? And there's a link for it. Are they a crutch which inhibits learning mixing skills, or can they really, truly be beneficial?
I think that those are the kind of thing you throw at something and see how they turn out. And then most of the time they don't. So you just kind of go, okay, well, we gave it a shot. And then you go back to opening up the real tools and start to dig into it. I don't think they're necessarily a waste of time if they came in a bundle. I don't know if I buy them as a single thing, because I think that they'll work about 10% of the time. They'll work great when you do that, but probably about 10% of the time. Go ahead, Mitchell.
I agree with Alex. I think that you can't expect it to do everything. AI is sort of young and inexperienced just now. There are some situations where it will work great, but you have to try it out to see. But don't completely depend upon it to make up for your experience or your knowledge of doing mixing, because it's always going to be better.
And for our producers, we probably have enough room for a couple more questions if you feel like throwing them in before the end of the hour. We're cutting through these ones pretty quickly. Next question.
Josh Kaufman from Pittsburgh, PA. Hey, Doug, you decided on the SE Electronics version 7 dynamic mic for NAB coverage over all the other dynamic mics you tested. Which mics did you not make the cut versus the SE for background rejection?
Go ahead, Doug.
I almost kind of hate to answer that question because mic selection is so subjective.
We do. I do have to warn you that we have a thing about not talking about religion here. So it is. You're going to have to walk a very fine line here as we start talking about this. Go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. But I had to weigh a lot of different factors, and background rejection was only one of them. I needed something that was going to reject everything that's going on around me, but also sounded good on my own voice, and that eliminates a lot of mics right out of the gate. I tested the SEV7, of course, Sennheiser E835, AKG D5, D7. For background rejection, I also tried the Heil PR40, but just didn't sound great on me, and I didn't want to be carrying something that big and heavy. I even included a Behringer XM8500 in the mix and a classic SM58, but in the end, the SEV7 had the best balance of sounding good on me and rejecting everything that was going on around me.
That's great. And you're going to, are you at NAMM today or just over the weekend?
That was at NAB, actually. So.
Oh, was that NAB? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Are you going to NAMM?
I have not made plans to, no.
Okay, well, there you go. Next question.
From Douglas Carmichael, Carl's blunt statement and a quote, "stop buying and start learning," unquote, is an indictment of the quest for, quote, "larger scale at all cost," unquote. Should we start thinking more in terms of quality versus quantity in the systems we build and content we produce?
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, that was a blunt quote, but a very good one, I thought, from Carl. And I couldn't agree more. In fact, whenever you're out on a job, one of the things I love most is time is short and you have some things to figure out and you only have a certain amount of gear with you. So you have to know that gear, what it does, what it doesn't do, because you don't want to try to build a fix and realize that you can't do that with the gear you have. So stop buying things, start learning things is a really good tip. And I never thought I would actually say this, but reading the manual for things is super useful. Something that I do now whenever I'm making like educational videos about these tools is read the manual. And I can't believe how many things I've learned by just reading that manual.
Yeah. I used to work at a company that sold software, and they had a room that was full of people just answering questions. People would call in, I can't figure out why this isn't working, and their backhanded insult that no one really got was like, "Oh no, that's just an RTM problem. Let me walk you through it." That's all they'd say. "Oh no, that's just an RTM problem." Let's read the manual. It's just to read the manual problem. Like, we told you how to do this very clearly. I will say that I'm looking forward to people building better manuals. It is we're still stuck in horrible little images and cryptic things written by sometimes with people that English is not their first language, and it's such a powerful thing when it's written well. And I think that we need to move to more interactive videos and stuff built into it, because I think what people lose in that area is you get connected to products because you know them. You know them really well, and the more you know how to use the product, the less likely you are to use something else, because it's just like, oh, I'd have to relearn all of those things. And so building those learning tools makes it much easier for people to embed into your product. And so I think that companies should really be funding their manual production out of their marketing budget, because it's probably the most powerful marketing they can do. Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, and just to add to that, learning, I think Carl was actually talking about synthesis and sort of learning the theory behind that, but that would apply to any sort of equipment, if it's audio or video or synths and things like that, learning the fundamentals of what's involved in the core of those protocols and the design of your sound or the pathway of your video, what's involved there. And then maybe also taking your gear and putting it in different configurations. Like I have a X32 rack that's been in 10 or 15 different rack configurations, and each time it's connected to different equipment and out on a job in a different scenario. So sort of, testing that out in the field or at home will kind of give you those tools, as John sort of was mentioning, so that you're not stuck in the field and learning it on the fly.
Good guy.
Yeah, I would say volunteer or help people create other shows. Like we help Tony Mobley, not just to help Tony Mobley, but to run something through a system and see how it works. And I think that's how Office Hours started was, hey, let's answer some questions, but let's see if we could help evolve this. And with everybody's thinking, we can push it forward. The other thing is that as you get on set, you'll figure out what people have. And if you want to invest in that same type of thing, they might say like, oh yeah, I bought this U87, but I could have bought 5 of these other mics for the same price, and so-and-so's using it and it sounds just as good. So sometimes with equipment, you get like 90% of the need for half the price. So you just got to be careful about what you're buying and then take into fact redundancy. And then as you specialize, you get faster. So Jesse Mills knows audio really well. And so having a bag where he could go in, auto scan frequencies, he can see if he needs to put up an antenna to reject some of those other frequencies that may be straying into his channels. The takeaway is that you hire pros, you're going to get the result every time, and you become pro by doing shows. So you got to just get out there and start working and watching what other people are doing. So the more you work, the wiser you get.
Go ahead, Bill.
Plus, I do think the tool that you're using changes you a little bit, and I think this helps Carl's construct, stop buying and start learning. I know that I, in my early career, worked in probably 25 different recording studios, and I had at least 15 different mics hung in front of me. They all worked, but I did find myself subtly changing. When I had a set of cans on and I was working a particular mic, I would work a little farther or a little closer. I would be a little on axis or off axis. I'd push my voice harder, or know that I was on a really sensitive condenser and I could get down and whisper. It would be fine. So the tool that you get used to using actually can affect your performance. So if you spend all this time worrying about, is this mic much, better for me than that one? Well, for which performance? What's your state? Are you up and nervous and you're got more tension in your voice? Or are you really calm in your voice booth and you're really talking about the low frequencies and want to do that? It's all different every day.
Next question.
And it's from Deborah Woodfork in Washington, D.C., looking for a recommendation on all-in-one international travel adapters.
Yeah, so the one that I use is called an S-Cross, S-K-R-O-S-S, and there's one that's an everything-to-everything kind of adapter. I have one of those in my bag. I don't use them very heavily, and I don't recommend using them as a primary thing because they lift the ground. So most of these ones that switch don't usually carry the ground from one side to the other. And you'll notice if you plug your laptop in and you have a ground lift, your laptop will feel like you're gliding across the top of it. It's because you're the ground. Like, like if you don't lift the ground, if you lift the ground, you become the ground. And I was spending a lot of time traveling, and I noticed there was a dark area that was forming on my laptop, and I realized that was my skin. So anyway, it was over time. So
you were electroplating your.
I was electroplating I was personalizing my laptop at a whole new level, And so you want to really think about lifting the ground is not a great idea. It's not good for your electronics. It's not good for you. So you want to think about things that are going to be a true connection. So again, I do carry one of these S crosses. That's not the one, but that is one that I like to use. So I have a bunch of these. Now I will connect anything to a specific plug, and that specific plug is going to have a ground. In this case, that's the European one that's got the ground on either sides and the 2 pins. But I look for those S crosses that are going to go to that specific thing. You can also get smaller ones that are just these really cheap $3 each kind of thing. I buy them in boxes, and I'm going from what I'm trying to get to. And a lot of times they're an international set of combinations on the front, and then they go into whether it's a European or the one in the UK or the 3-pin in Italy or the other 3-pin in New Zealand or whatever. So there's these different pins, or Australia. So there's lots of different ones, but I carry them and I figure out what countries I'm going to, and I take those with me. Now these don't have transformers. Remember that an adapter is only transforming the plug, and it's not transforming the voltage. So you always want to look at your products and make sure that they handle 110 to 220. Almost all electronics do, except for hair dryers. Irons, anything that's doing heat will tend to be one voltage or another, and so that's the only thing you have to kind of think about when you're doing those transformations. And then the other thing is that remember that if you get the NEMA, the C13, that's what goes into the back of a lot of your devices, your larger devices. It's a little 3-prong that goes into the back of your computer or back. You can buy those in any hardware store anywhere in the world. And on one side is the plug that you need, and on the other side is the C13. It's one of the reasons that all of our monitors, we buy monitors with C13s, is because I get to France and I go to the local, whatever, and buy a bunch of cables for them and plug them in. And then staying away from adapters as often as you can is highly recommended. Not that I'm obsessed. We had a whole shelf that was just adapters for other countries, so I'm a little obsessive about it. All right, next question.
It's from John Barker in Malmö, Sweden. Any tips for listening to comms while out on a job and not being super rude to people who are talking to you in person at the same time?
See, I would say it's rude to talk to someone who's on comms. Sorry. Anyway, go ahead, Courtney.
I run into this all the time working as a teleprompter operator, because I'll be sitting there rehearsing with the actor who may be in another room or on camera across the room, and I'm hearing their microphone in my ear, and I'm having to scroll the teleprompter and stay in sync with them. So I'm very concentrated, and anything that disrupts that eye and ear to screen connection, like somebody coming up to me and asking me a stupid question while I'm doing that, is difficult to deal with. So I use the international symbol for stand by, which is the single finger raised in the air next to my head.
with a slightly perturbed look.
The index finger. Make sure it's the index finger and not any other finger. And don't establish eye contact with them. And that way they realize, oh, your attention is elsewhere.
With a slightly pursed lips, just you got to wait for a second. Go ahead, Jonas.
I think a lot of it has to do with comms etiquette. If you have people always talking into your ear, something is wrong with your comms. Like if you, as an engineer, listen to the production line and constantly get talked at there to like, hey, can you change that route? That's the wrong line to be on. So split apart your lines, make sure that you have a line that's specific to you. And then for me, it's always who is more important at this point. Sometimes there are comms that are really not important that I'll just ignore. And then you'll be like, hey, I'm back on comms. Also, like, we established that we wait for someone to accept the comms call. So we'll call out for someone, and often if I then see the client walk to me, you hear standby. Also, people that want to talk to me and are not on comms, normally we have client handlers that take care of people that don't want to be on comms and are the comms bridge to them. So just be like, hey, yeah, talk to them. They'll be able to talk to the right person to make sure there's a separation between crew, our people that are on comms, the rest is people that are not on comms, and they should talk to the person that is designated to talk to people that are not on comms, especially if I'm like working on a system. That's how I separate it. And then obviously on the smaller ones, just make sure that your crew knows if to repeat stuff.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I particularly agree with Courtney, is that there are certain professionals that you give certain courtesies to, and if they're not making eye contact with you, and if they're giving you any kind of sign language, anything like this or whatever, is to leave them alone. They're doing something. If I have a client that's already exhibited the ability to interrupt me when I'm on my phone, then I know they're going to do the same thing whenever they feel like it. And usually, again, the no eye contact, the finger up, and sometimes pointing at the ear works. But like Courtney says, it's a grab bag, and Jonas makes a good point that if we reduce the comm traffic, there'll be less chance of that happening.
Go ahead, Bill.
Also, good comms etiquette, a good director or a good tech director, whoever's talking to you, will keep things incredibly short, just the information you need, and no preamble. It's not, hey, I've got this message from somebody and blah, 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 and you should be on line 2. It's, Bill, line 2 next, period. And probably repeated once, line 2 next, Bill, line 2 next. And then if I don't get it the first time, I get it the second time, and that's all I need to know where I'm going next. It is a relationship done well.
A lot of it, how you handle people, is also where they are in the food chain. So if someone's below the food chain of who's talking to me here, I will put my hand up to here and look away. That's me telling you that I'm now talking to somebody else, and I'll sit there and say what I need to say and then come back. Oh, sorry. Like, let's go back to what we were talking about. If the person that I'm talking to is above the food chain, or the person that's talking to me, I won't even recognize that I'm on a comm. Like, I'll just, the person, like, most importantly, if that person's above my food chain, like a client, a director, a producer, I will never interrupt them. Like that, and I think that I will say, this is the thing that people miss in comms, is letting comms take over when you're talking to someone that is running the show or paying for the show or doing something like that. When they're talking to you, give them your undivided attention, unless someone says something's on fire. Like, but otherwise, just even if you can't say anything about it, I'll just simply listen to them and focus this part out until they're done, and then I'll go manage whatever that was. Unless someone says something's on fire. Next question.
Dan Huber from Erie, Pennsylvania, just wondering if there will ever be some cooking on Saturdays in the future.
There will be eventually. So we, a lot of it is I think that it was a lot of setup on our end, a lot of stuff to put it together. It's not the way we do it for at least, Shannon and Damayanti and Hasmukh and I. It is, it's hours of getting set up. Now I got it down to about an hour and a half of setup, but it's a big commitment on our end. And the reality is that the participation cooking with us and the viewership had dropped a fair bit, and we had a lot of other things moving in all of our personal lives as well. And so that's how it got kind of put on pause. We will bring it back most likely over the summer. We're waiting to see if we get a couple things happening with Zoom, and we're kind of excited about, and so we're excited about doing it again. But what I will say is, if we do it again, you have to participate. Like, you have to come join us, or jump on and watch, or it won't last very long. Go ahead, Sky.
Well, I just love that it was a perfect hybrid of conversation and a show at the same time. And again, the casting, so to speak, of people. I learned so much.
Yeah.
But also it's the banter and the chit in the chat. And it's like, how did you do that? And, oh, what's this? And, oh, I tried this, or I found that thing. Or,
and there's so many things I make now based on the stuff that I cooked with that we cooked with Damayanti specifically, but with other folks as well. And so, so I think that I definitely want to do it again. Doing it every week is a thing. And so, and I have found that I know that sounds crazy, but I have limits. I'm starting to go, I'd really like my weekends to be a little.
And how is that koi pond?
Yeah, exactly. It's perfectly clear. I have fixed it. yeah, exactly. I went into beast mode, so it's a clear pool now. Next question.
Robert Shoji from Los Angeles. Has Guy had a chance to test the 2.4 gigahertz wireless lav system he mentioned the other day?
Good, Guy.
The only part that I've tested so far is not just for the clarity, but they have an app, and that's more like what I've been testing. So it's kind of like OBS, where it feeds a virtual camera into Zoom. So it's a microphone system that you can use it with your cell phone or anything that'll take a USB input. But the magic is going to be as they release this app that allows you to frame up a person. So here's in a conference room, Bill, Sue, and Bob, and you frame up them. And then with the mic, you actually have numbers or colors on the mic. And so this is the back plate. You pull off the back plate and there's a number. Like on this one right here, you see this one's number 1. And then this would go on their shirt. And you can see that the back plate magnetically snaps onto it. I put a link in the chat for an audio comparison because every time that I've been using it, I haven't been able to hear myself because of the way that Zoom works with no return for side tone. But yeah, it looks like a cool package, but I think it's more meant for Zoom people. The Rode and the DJI would probably be better for clarity, but this has a specific purpose.
It is. I think that it looks cool. I will say that it brings me back to you can make content easy to make or easy to watch and listen to. And I think that I'd rather spend more and work harder at it and have really good audio. That's the most important part of your content. All right. We are now changing subjects. We are jumping into the second hour and talking about Stream Day 2022. And without any more preamble, I'm just going to hand it off to John Barker to kind of tell us how this all came together.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So just for a quick little refresher, if you happen to not watch Stream Day, no problem at all. But the idea was we wanted to pull together a bunch of YouTube creators that are basically in our space here, ATEM people, vMix people, production people, to do a virtual event. And for us, since we all have our own YouTube channels and places we want to post our videos and live stream to, it really made sense to take full advantage of all of those channels. So rather than me throw all of this on my own YouTube channel, what we did was we had a collection of YouTubers here. I'm just showing the little image of who was on the show, but we had Joseph, Aaron, Doug, who's here on the panel today, Ryan, David, and Petra as well, many of which you might have saw on my channel or any of their channels doing live streams and all that good stuff. And over the course of a few months, we chatted once a month. So we didn't have many meetings about this, but we know we had a goal in mind for May 25th. So a few weeks ago there, we wanted to do this event and we could share tips. And it turned into sort of like a back-to-back breaking down of different types of topics. For example, here, if I just show the site again, we kick things off with me doing a 30-minute introduction, over to Photo Joseph talking about cameras, Doug talked about audio, Petra about switchers, David about controlling your show, and I just had to go again. I just had to have it that way. So I talked about graphics. Ryan talked about guests, Aaron streaming, and then we wrapped everything all up together with a 60-minute long panel discussion at the very end of the show. What was interesting, though, is we decided to use different channels, and therefore we had some work to do to get people from one channel to the other. Services like Twitch have a raid function where you can push people to someone else's channel at the end of your stream. And recently, it seems that YouTube has done something pretty similar that they call live redirects, which means that at the end of my stream, I can push everybody over to Photo Joseph's channel. We can discuss how well that went as time goes on here. But in theory, it worked well for a portion of people. And for others, it wasn't very hard to just click on the next link.
How does it work and how does it not work?
So I learned the hard way that you have to turn on autoplay on your channel, or on your specific YouTube session. So if you've turned off autoplay in your player, then it won't automatically direct you to the next stream. And I also believe if you had chat popped out, then it didn't automatically work. But if you don't fall into those two buckets, if you have everything sitting just normal, then whenever one person presses stop on their stream, it bounces on to the next channel's stream that you've set up in the back end. We did have some difficulty setting that up in the early days. So about 2 weeks out, we were creating the streams, but things were just not working the way we thought they should. So we sent some requests off to YouTube support, and they said everything works just fine. What are you talking about? And then suddenly everything worked just fine. So who knows? In fact, if you're ever wanting to do something like this, you can pop into your YouTube dashboard settings here, and you can say who can redirect to your channel. You can see I have a few faces here that you might know from before there, but you can also say anyone who I've subscribed to can direct to my channel, and that way it works as you want it to work. From there, when you create a YouTube link, actually it is like a little tutorial here, but I think that's okay since maybe this is something people haven't done before. In my live video section over on YouTube, I'm going to show you that in a second here, but it's refusing to load for me. Yeah, so in my live video section on YouTube, I can head into the customization here, and I can choose to add a redirect after the stream, and then I can see other streams that I have or other streams on those channels. So here, for example, Photo Joseph's going live in a couple of hours time, and I could send everyone over to his channel right after that. That's where things got interesting, pushing people around. It's always fun, but we didn't really know until the time came if it was going to work, but luckily it did. And one of the really fun thing was to watch people leave one stream and then flow into the next one, and all the chat messages come in there. Really kept up that enthusiasm and support as the 30 minutes chunks went by and we jumped from each channel to channel. A few of the other tools we used during the process, one of them, I don't think we could have done it without Stage Timer, which is a tool I use a lot for my freelance jobs these days, but it really worked well for this. In fact, this is the session that we used where I put in all the times, and then I gave everyone a view link to this, and they could see how long they had left in their session. And it's like a classic Stage Timer tool that you might have used before, but since it works over the internet, then we can all use the same link, and we all basically have the same times, 30 minutes of each timer, and then, well, more like 28 minutes with a couple of minutes of you should really be finishing up now and pushing over to the next channel. And then beyond that, we had things like graphics that sort of pulled the streams together. So for example, if I just load up one of my my streams here, I had created a little map for everybody so we could play this at the start of all of our streams. So this is not a good example. Let me go down to a different one here. Let's see if Doug has it. Yeah, so I had like a little route that went from one stream to the next as a little 2-minute countdown timer. So people had something to keep them busy while we went from one channel to the next. And then Doug, who's on the panel here as well, created a few graphics for us as well. Doug, I hope you're still there. Can you chat about the graphics you made for us all? Great.
Yeah, so I just wanted to give us kind of some consistent look from one video to the next, so that all of our lower thirds were the same and the other assets that we were using. So I just basically sat down and went into my Digital Juice account and found a few different things that I could use that would kind of tie things together a little bit. And John had established kind of this grayscale look where we have a lot of solid blocks of just different grays, and so I took some of the stuff that I'd downloaded from Digital Juice and just made it monochrome. I just took out all the saturation, and then I created a series of ProRes files with an alpha channel, and then made those available at the different resolutions that we were going to be streaming at. So Joseph and I streamed in 4K, and then everybody else is at 1080p. So I created versions of those assets for both, and then I also created versions for people who didn't have devices capable of handling the alpha channel. So I had to create 4 versions of every one of the assets in order to make sure that everybody was going to be covered there. But ultimately, I just wanted to make sure that it was going to be easy for everybody that was going to be part of this to be able to incorporate a similar look, some nice high quality graphics that was going to add a nice little bit of finesse and a little bit of class to the streams.
Absolutely. And Jonas, how did you jump into this?
Yes, so at some point, John then mentioned that he's going to do this whole panel, and at some point I was like, let me help you, because you don't have to host a panel with 7 people and then also produce it. So we produced it with see if this works here. This is how the panel looked, and this presentation just got thrown together. So if it looks off, it probably didn't look off in the video. I just had to rebuild everything. So this was the output, and now go to the overflow, how everything worked. We used one of our larger cloud studios who can handle up to 9 Zoom pins. And then we took in all the 7 pins, actually.
And just to outline, Cloud Studio is your product?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not. I just want to make sure people know if you're looking for it, that's their product. Go ahead.
And we had 7 pins, and then 30 minutes out, John convinced me to also be part of the panel for 2 minutes to explain how we did it. So we just had another pin that we popped in there. And then from there, we streamed it to the YouTube primary and secondary to have a failover if YouTube has an issue. For this one, we didn't have a fully redundant infrastructure. All the contributions were done over Zoom. And then we had HDR graphics, playout B, and stage timer on our end on the Cloud Studio. And for a technician, this is the multi-view that you get over Zoom. So you just see all the people, you see the 7-up, and this is fully customizable to how I would have wanted. This is how I set it up for me, so I could see everything. And then what was really interesting with this one is we had Tucker Dragoo doing the audio magic, not only mixing, but also sweetening. So he had access over Parsec to the instance and had a bunch of processors that I'm sure a lot of people know what they do. I don't fully know. And then we also had an Behringer X-Touch. So he had physical faders on everyone. So we could really...
So to be clear, you're running the X-Touch over the cloud, into the cloud, right? This is...
Yes.
Or was it, yeah. So that's... How did you set up that protocol?
There's the software is called Central Control, and it then can talk to the studio. That's and great. That way we just have faders for all the inputs. You can also do it for the buses. The only thing that we can't have is knobs for the physical, all the things. So right now you either use a touch screen like you would use in an LV1 setup, or like you use your mouse. And then the last cool thing is John also wanted to integrate graphics, and gladly we found a little solution there. So he just had an iPad that he could use, and the iPad controlled all the on-screen graphics. So John, for some reason, still wanted to have 2 jobs at least on the panel instead of just posting. He also decided to do graphics. So we had him on the system, and he was able to just pull all the graphics up that he wanted, do the chat, and HDR graphics was hosted by us.
That's great. John?
Well, yeah, John just wanted to do 2 jobs. Exactly. The last time I did a show and I was the host and someone else was running the graphics and we were using my graphics tool, people were asking me questions about it. So this time I just thought I'll just do the graphics since I know the tool well. And it worked out nicely. The only thing, a couple of things to add to that would be that we learned a lot from this. It was an experiment just to see if this would work. Making people bounce from channel to channel, would they stick around? Could we get some sort of momentum going? So it was definitely a test bed for what could be future iterations of this, for sure. A couple of things we definitely learned was on that website I showed you before with all of the links on there. We could have had something that was a little bit more clear about who was currently live. So you jump on the page and it takes you straight to that person, or something along those lines. And we did mostly have a flawless-ish experience here and there. There were a few little quirks. But Doug, maybe you're still around to talk about interesting quirks on your end and some troubleshooting you've done since then.
Yeah, so I ran into the classic problem of a stream basically going down right in the middle of it. So I like to produce the videos on my channel in 4K, and I also wanted to stream in 4K. And so my approach to this was I was going to try and use the Blackmagic Web Presenter 4K device in order to do that. And this was going to be the first time that I used it on a real production, so I spent quite a bit of time testing it. So the stream day was on a Wednesday. I had spent Sunday afternoon, Monday night, Tuesday night, and then earlier Wednesday morning running the Web Presenter 4K. make sure that it was going to be all right. But then a couple minutes into my stream, it started caching and filling up the cache like basically immediately. And basically anybody who was watching the video was getting a lot of stuttering, a lot of buffering. And I was so involved in the content that I was trying to get across that I wasn't paying close attention to that. And actually, Photo Joseph had to call me on the phone to let me know that my stream was not acting up, or my stream was acting up. But fortunately, in case that had happened, I had configured a second web presenter HD instead of the 4K version to fill in. And so as soon as he let me know that, I physically ripped the Ethernet cable out of the back of the web presenter 4K and then started up the stream on the web presenter HD. And that got me back up and going. But it wasn't without some issues on the side of the viewers. They were definitely seeing a less than ideal stream. Fortunately, I always make recordings, and I was able to re-upload later. So if you go back and watch now, you'll be able to see the full high-quality version without any glitches in it or whatever. But on the day, there was definitely some issues that we had to deal with. In terms of what's going on with the Web Presenter 4K, I'm still trying to figure that out. I spent 2.5 hours a couple days ago in a live stream working with my viewers, some of which are very tech-savvy, and we still don't know what's wrong with the device or what kind of issues there are in terms of compatibility with my networking gear. But basically at this point, the Web Presenter 4K is still not working the way that we want it to. And so if I do this again, I definitely won't be using that. I'll probably go back to OBS, which is what I've been using previously in order to do the 4K streaming.
Next question.
And a question comes up from Douglas Carmichael. How did you manage the panel discussion? Did you use a Mukana or a Mukana-like platform?
Go ahead, John.
For the Q&A for the panel, I just used the YouTube chat basically, and in my graphics tool, I can pull in all of that chat and then show it on the screen. So that's how we used a lot of the Q&A. I also, during the day, I watched all of the other streams and I took note of any questions that weren't answered during that time, because I was quite keen to pull all that stuff to later into the panel discussion. So that was the sort of copy paste method of grabbing questions and pulling them later in the panel discussion.
Next question.
Next question is from Bill Davis in San Diego. Did you track engagement viewers across the various participants, or did many separate feeds make that too difficult?
Yeah, I think so far we haven't actually taken a look back and seen how things are going. I know at the time everyone was talking about getting subscribers along the way during the journey, but we haven't went back and looked at the videos just yet. I think in the future we might look at that next time we're going to build something like this. But for now, I think we were all really happy with how it went, and we just wanted to talk about the technical things that we can improve for next time, and then maybe after that we can set some, well, not targets, but ideas of what we want to push and how that flow should work.
Yeah, absolutely, Doug. Yeah,
we didn't really have any formal system in place for tracking that, but as the day was going on, we all kind of kept an eye on each other's channels to see how many viewers there were, and it seemed pretty consistent from one channel to the next, even though across the channels we have a pretty wide variety of subscriber numbers, but fairly consistently from one stream to the next, we were seeing 100 to 150 viewers from one stream to the next.
That's great. Next question.
And it comes to us from Wouter Kolejimin, whatever, of Bunschoten. Jonas, can you send a link to Cloud Studio?
It is so new, it doesn't have a website yet. So if that's something you're interested in renting or need help with, reach out to me on Discord or per email, and we'll have a conversation.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael, pardon me. In the Twitch community, rating is part of the culture and an expected behavior of streamers on the platform. Do you think that the YouTube platform is too fragmented for live redirects to have the same positive community building effect?
Go ahead, Jonas.
First of all, I would say even the Twitch community is pretty fragmented. If there are these amazing graphs that show viewers per streamer and show which viewers are closer together. And like we have a huge Minecraft scene, but even that is splitted into different. Rating is a really nice way for people to keep watch time and to not have a low. Rating also takes a bit to do right. There are some people that buy themselves rates to get artificially boosted on Twitch. That almost never works. What really works is if 3 people are friends, and let's say they do some projects together, stream a same game together, and then one of them continues streaming a single player stream. 2 of them suddenly raid. And that works really well where the community is already warm to the other streamer. And one of the coolest raids that I always find is if like a raid comes in and the streamer actually is like, oh, great that your stream is over. What did you do in this stream? Tell me a little more. Like, oh yeah, we worked on that. We developed that. And have this conversation between communities. And if then the streamer that raided is there in the chat for like another 20 minutes, that really builds engagement. That's where you can grow. And I think obviously some people also do really bad things with raids and try to suppress people and hate people by bringing all their viewers on another channel by once. And there have been stuff where a child streamer suddenly raids someone and they're like, well, we now have an audience of 12 years on a not safe for work stream. So there are some issues with it. So I think how YouTube solved it is pretty nice. But like if John and I would be game streamers and I would end my stream and I want my viewers to watch his stream, I think it's a really nice way. And like even for something like we did with Super Saturday, it would have solved so many problems to just be able to say, go here. And to be clear, when John said it didn't work, it didn't work automatically. So it never worked automatically for me. But what it always said is the next video shows the live stream even. So like if you click, then go ahead. It's a click more. And even in the chat, it shows a lot of viewers from this channel jumped over to this. So like it creates a little bit of this peer pressure with the wording. Then says, jump over here because you don't want to miss out. And then when you jumped over with that link, it says, hey, you and a lot of viewers from John Barker jumped to Doug from this channel. Say hello in the chat. So like they're trying to entice the community building there. And I think it's a great addition to YouTube.
Good, John.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good addition to have. And Jonas was absolutely right. A lot of it is about sort of agreeing with each other that we were going to do this. I know as I do live streams on my channel and you're watching the chat and you're thinking about things, there's a lot going on in your head, and to all of a sudden see loads of people saying something about coming here from a different channel, it can be a little bit confusing about what's going on. So for YouTube's part, making it very clear for me as the live streamer that people have come and where they've come from and why they're suddenly here is really helpful. And I have no idea about the settings in Twitch, but the setting in YouTube that says only these people can send people to my channel is a pretty big one, I think. And if we agree in advance that we're going to send each other to each other's channels, then it all works out nicely, and it's a really good feature.
How long has this feature been around?
I would say months at the most, and certainly I've never seen it in action.
The live redirect has been there for a longer time for their own channel. They took a while till they implemented live redirect to other channels. And I think the stream day was the first time I see it, and I watch a lot of YouTube streams, so it can't be that it's working seems to be pretty new, especially over channels, because I know we tried it for Super Saturday, and live redirects were there, but only on your own channel.
Yeah, interesting.
Working is kind of a relative term, though, too, because even as we were setting this up, we'd go into the settings for a video and say this is where we want to redirect after ours is over. I didn't see any of the people that were part of Stream Day as part of that list. I had to manually paste in the URL of the video that I wanted to go to in order to get it to work. Their built-in tools just didn't seem to want to work for that.
It's a complicated thing to do when you think about the way that YouTube manages streams. I mean, all it really is doing is moving the direct to a new reference point. But still, with all the permissions and everything else, it's a web of things in there. I'm always amazed that anything changes in YouTube, and it's always amazing because they have this giant train that is moving very fast, and trying to retool anything is an issue. Next question.
Greg Gibson from Washington, D.C. Was Tucker's audio magic done in the cloud itself? If so, what tools was he using?
Go ahead, Jonas.
Yes, the audio did not leave the cloud till it hit YouTube. So it all was done in the cloud with bunch of plugins. This is basically the overview screen of a little less with what we work with.
Were you using any vegetables or fruit as part of this?
I like to not use vegetables in my productions.
So
I
no
can't
potato.
say how often that has been a problem. It's
Sorry.
yeah.
Anyway,
No,
So
this
it's
is
not
all native VST plugins.
I got it. Inside
all
of
of the
vMix.
waves. Yeah, inside of vMix right now. But we're working on externalizing that.
Good. Next question.
Guy Gleason from Seattle, Washington. John Barker, it looks like you're in a new physical space. Do you have everything you want in this studio, or are you still building?
Go ahead, John.
Yes, since the last time I've been on the panel, I moved into a office space. Funny enough, we were just talking about this in the pre-show. I've got more square meters in this office space than I do in my home. So I've really, expanded. And for me, that's a lot. I think in terms of gear, I'm slowly getting things and trying to reuse things where possible. But in terms of the break between home and work, that has been one of the best parts. Whenever I leave this office space in an hour's time or whatever we're done here, I can leave all the cables that I've set out where they are, go home and not worry about them until I come back tomorrow or on Monday. It seems like a small enough thing, but whenever you're in a tiny house, one SDI cable running across the room is a nuisance, never mind cameras set up. So slowly building it, slowly rechanging everything. I've already rebuilt it twice now in the last few months, but I'm really happy with it.
Go ahead, Sky.
I just want to say congratulations, because we were there at the beginning of your, I'm going to start a thing on my own. And we just have watched your iterations and evolution. And it's just been a joy, because you're such a quality product and a quality human that it's just great to see your success. Thank you for sharing.
Go ahead, Courtney.
And is that rack of Blackmagic equipment that seems to be beautifully out of focus in the background, is it in a fly pack, or is it permanently mounted in the studio, or can you move it around and take it to events?
It is in a Millennium something rack metal case that I just put it in today, and it will stay here. So my whole thing now is I will do freelance jobs for people, but I will not bring anything with me. They must provide everything, because I do not want to pull anything out of the studio anymore. So it's semi-permanently mounted there, because the other issue is that I want to make videos about these things, and I'm grabbing them and pulling them out. So, it's a mixture of both right now.
I was just talking to someone about this the other day, which was that we were talking about the fact that people who do load-ins all the time, one of the things they just talk about as a dream is, how about we build a studio? Like, how about I never have to do this again? And, I built a whole stage in our office right now that's got all this stuff in it, mostly because I never want to load in again. So it's just, it's after thousands of events, I'm like, I'm done if I can make it work. Next question.
Guy Cochran from Seattle. Nice job, guys. What would be in the room for improvement to make it even smoother, better next time?
Go ahead, John.
I have a long list that's too long for the remainder of the time here, but one of the big things that I want to do anyway, is I want to continue streaming to each channel, which I think worked out really well for everyone's sake. But I would like to take the main control, either into the cloud or into a dedicated space, and then stream to each channel from there instead. That way, if, for example, like Doug talked about earlier, where he's having issues and we couldn't get in touch with him, the only way was somebody had to give him a phone call. We could either play a pre-recorded thing that we had ready. We could interject with myself as like a host saying, hey, we're just having some troubles here. We'll come back to that soon. Just to have that level of control, since no one really wants to be, in control of everything, but what they want is to see everyone succeed and everything to go well. And if there's nothing we can do to get in the way of the problem, then we're all just sitting back waiting to see what happens. So finding better comm solutions or to set up like a main control area is probably one of the biggest changes I would like to see next time. And beyond that, we're all open to any ideas and stuff like that. So whatever ideas you have, throw them at us.
Go, Jonas.
Yeah, I would love to see an MCI. I think that would have helped a bit. I also would find it cool if it would be a bit more people. I think that would be That'd be cool and a little longer.
More people in the panel?
Not certainly in the panel, but maybe like one or two more panel discussions. Because I found those really interesting when a couple of people come together for a specific topic for 30 minutes that seemed to work really well. Next time a little more time between person is live and person is a panelist on our panel. That was a little close.
As you know, I don't believe in panels at all. I think they're a horrible waste of time, and I don't think that anyone should try that. It's just, I wouldn't do that very often. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I just want to come back just to say that one of the problems of taking everything into a main control area is I also really love this sort of rough and ready attitude that we all had, and we're all streaming from our own little areas. And if it became too polished, it might lose that feeling of like we're a community doing this together. So I think one of the challenges actually would be if we were to move it into a main control area, trying to keep the feeling of each person's doing their individual parts. There's a very fine line there, I think, between a super polished show and something that's quite like community driven and feels nice and loose.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Next question.
Guy continues with his question. What other communities could you envision benefiting from the live redirect flow?
Go ahead, Jonas.
I think it's a lot of the gaming community. Like when we in the more broadcasty or like live production, corporate production say, oh, we had a long stream that's like 2-3 hours. When a gamer says he had a long stream, it's 12 to 15 hours. There's a lot of like, you build up your whole engagement over 12 hours. There's this point where if you just turn off, it feels weird. It's the weirdest feeling, like letting that many people go. So being able to redirect them to your friend who's in another time zone and just started streaming or is doing a 24/7 stream, like not giving all those people something else to go to, I found really beneficial. So especially for gamers, I think it's going to be big. And then for collaborations, like a lot of YouTubers for video form like to do like, hey, we do a series. Episode 1 is on my channel. Episode 2 is on your channel. You could do that with streaming now, just like John did. Like the first panel is here, the second panel is here. Let's have a look at this. And I think that will help through live events organically grow communities that already are a community tighter together. So I think that's where it's going to be used. But I don't see John suddenly sending his live streamers over to PewDiePie or some game streamer, probably within communities.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I'm really interested in is the idea of these global events. So we've done global events where we've done 12 hours and up to 48 hours. Well, actually one that was 72 hours long. Did them all in one place or all in one time zone where we're jumping around, but we're not really jumping around the world. And I think that there's a real interesting opportunity to move an audience from, you start at one date line or whatever and just keep working all day, slowly moving from one location to the other. Now, the way that we've done some things that are similar to that is all through one master control, but not jumping from one channel to another. And I think that it's really interesting, the idea of jumping from channel to channel. One thing that we have seen folks do collaboratively, and they haven't done it with channel jumping, they've just done it by having different streams on different locations and using a web page to kind of tie it together. I think that's what people did before that, is really around fundraising. So you get a bunch of people that are interested, and each one of them had an ability to take money, and so they'd move you from one place to another, but when you're donating during that time block, you're donating to that group as opposed to the other group, but that was all done on a web page, and so I think that there's a possibility of kind of tying that all into YouTube without the having to. That was a funny thing is that I think they spent more money building the web page than they raised. With the thing. So, and it was paid for by a big company. that won't give you, they didn't have to pay for it as nonprofits, but I'm just saying, I think more energy went into it than they could have just given them the money, but it was a good activation. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I think pacing is a big part of what we were trying to figure out. So originally my plan for this was like a stream day, like 12, maybe not 24 hours, but 12 hours of streaming.
Right.
or a long form event where everyone has 60 minutes or more to chat. But I think what we felt in the end was for this one, just to get that really shrunk down to 30-minute chunks over the course of 5 or 6 hours really made sense. But for the future, I would like to definitely try longer form, a bit more time to talk about the discussion topic that you're getting into, and then really dedicating time for the Q&A, because, well, you may as well just play a video if you're not going to take any questions at all. But yeah, I think for Doug, I think of all of us had the biggest challenge to try and pack a lot of audio related things into a very short amount of time, and I think he did a pretty good job doing that.
Absolutely. Next question.
Jonas Dattel from Stuttgart. Should we use live redirect during office hours to send from the first to the second hour?
I feel like for me, I have so many other moving parts that I probably wouldn't add another variable, to it. One thing that we are doing, you'll notice that I'm getting closer and closer, and occasionally I hit it, of really flipping the hours right at the top of the hour. So, I'm, really tying that in. A couple days this week, I think I hit it within a couple seconds. And so I'm starting to tie that in. That is because we are preparing potentially for satellite distribution of the show. So we're trying to set it up for TV networks and so on and so forth. And so I think we're paying more attention to that. There's some other things that we hope to, I guess, break new ground in office hours. It's just probably not jumping from channel to channel, or from a show to a show, because we're got a lot of other moving parts that we're managing. Go ahead, Jonas.
Yeah, the reason why I thought about it is because right now, if we would cut off the second hour into its own video to be able to promote that more versus just a Q&A,
right,
we would need to cut it, and then we would lose the live viewers. But we basically could duplicate our views technically by making people jump from hour 1 to hour 2 and have both of them live recorded as live streams. It might be worth it to try.
The funny thing is that what we actually want is people to realize that there's a first hour that we're just doing Q&A. So if we cut them out and it becomes that show, it actually communicates less of. I find that the second hour is a great draw, and I think that it's great because we get to focus on something. But I think that there's a real power in the first hour of just knowing that every day you can walk up and ask a question and there's someone there to answer it, and it changes every day. And so we want to make sure that people know about both of them. And I think my concern is mostly that the second hour would then be something that people see and we promote it, but they don't realize that there's a first hour that's pretty powerful as well. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I was just going to say, making people do things is usually a lot to ask. So if you can avoid making them click on things because it didn't automatically jump to the next channel, then it's probably best to just not add that barrier.
Yeah, it's funny. I mix for things that I think are really exciting. I think that are technically usually in some kind of version of surround or HDR or something like that. I will jump on things very quickly and want to be the first one to do something. For things that are mechanical on the web, I have a tendency to follow. I tend to watch it because the things that are video, again, things that I have control over in hardware, I'm pretty aggressive about what we can do. Things that deal with web linkages, I tend to just watch everybody else do it and kind of follow through once it's stabilized and figured out, because I find it to be a lot less predictable, and so I tend to just let it sort itself out and let other people show me how to make that work first, which I'm very appreciative of the work that all of you are doing. Next question.
Greg Gibson from Washington, D.C. Can Jonas talk a little more about his Cloud Studio product and what is included?
Go ahead, Jonas.
Yeah, so some of you probably already noticed on LinkedIn that Taka Dragu and I, we joined forces and built a little company together called BSCMP Global. And one of the services that we provide is this Cloud Studio. And it's meant for people that don't really want to deal with all the hassle of the cloud. So it's you don't have to think about in which cloud service it is. All you know is I'm a TD, I see a multi-view, I have buttons to press that do the thing that the button says. Like with any good switcher panel, you can just do your job and don't have to think about all the complexity of that feed is from Germany. That feed comes from Australia. How do we match those? The same thing also for audio people. That's still a little more rough-ish, right? What we then also do is like MCR stuff within the studio. So like you need an SRT feed distributed to an RTMP feed to multiple other channels. You just have an SDI and somehow need to have that go to YouTube. We do the end-to-end. So we send you an encoder, you plug it in, pops out at YouTube on the other end, and we can put that through our studio. So that's basically what we do in that aspect. So the cloud studio can do many things, from stream contribution over SRT contribution, and then it can go through our MCR. It can go wherever. It's like we can output to 60 SRT. We can make sure it ends up on 17 of your branches on screens over HDMI. If you don't want to think about transport or networking at all, we can put it in our CDN. We can put it on YouTube. We have all those capabilities, and it's all in the cloud. So it's not regionalized. Everything is distributed, and your whole team can work on it. Because we have this handicap that actually is a feature of our company. Two founders that don't live in the same country doing production makes stuff a lot harder at the start.
Have you ever met each other in person?
No.
That's great.
It makes stuff a lot harder. Yeah. But then, like, it doesn't matter. Location doesn't matter for us anymore, because we can't do production where it doesn't matter. We would need to fly to get to a central location. So for us, we really entice this whole decentralized and cloud workflows.
Yeah, when these guys are on cover of Wired magazine talking about distributed production, a lot of us will be like, yeah, they met each other in office hours. Yeah, there we go. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I just want to take this opportunity to thank Jonas and Tucker for their help. I asked Jonas to help me out, and he dragged Tucker into it. So the time they both spent working on this for no good reason other than just to do it is really appreciated. And knowing that the two of them are back there fixing things while we're all chatting in a panel is huge. I had to do that myself on previous things. And, it goes well sometimes and it doesn't go well others. But to have them there, you could just trust them to do it. It was wonderful.
Next question.
And panelist Bill Davis from San Diego has a question. Speaking of time zones, how did you schedule your event in order to capitalize on the largest potential audience being able to attend?
It looks like everyone in our content creator group is sort of focused on the what's 7 p.m. my time to go live. Everyone somehow has decided on that time. So we basically
you mean just in general, like that's when they're a lot of them.
Yeah, and we all do that at the same time on different days, basically. So that seemed like the perfect time to just kick things off at 7 my local time.
How many hours are you of the West Coast?
I'm not very good at time zones in my head.
Hours?
8-ish, I believe.
8-ish.
Oh,
yeah.
Because I thought that the UK is 8. I thought, or right now
we are
so
2
5
ahead
a.m.
of
the
UTC.
next day.
Sorry,
that would be 5 a.m. the next day on the east and the West Coast.
No. It'd be 7 p.m. would be like, I don't know, 8 or 9 in the end. Anyway, so I'm just curious because we have a lot of the math that we use is for the highest impact is tends to be for professional things. We tend to aim at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time is kind of on a pro thing, and then or 1 p.m. and then before or after lunch, and then the other one for personal things it's 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. Eastern Standard, because like things that are not professional, people having fun or whatever. And the reason for that is that East Coast folks work later than West Coast folks, so we start there. The West Coast folks are willing to leave at 4 or 5, and the East Coast folks don't feel like they can do that. So that's our kind of math on that. Go ahead, Jonas.
The interesting thing that I found is I often start when I plan stuff with office hours people. It's 1 hour after office hours, an hour before office hours. Even John just messaged me like, hey, are you free on Friday 1 hour after the pre-show? I'm like, yeah, sure. And then it's like, oh yeah, that's a second hour. But the other thing also is the time zone didn't make too big of a difference for stage timer. So like I just forgot about time at some point. I had the huge stage timer link up, and it just was ticking down how much time I have to prep. And then time zones didn't really play any difference anymore. And that's how we do most productions now. It's like a stage timer, and you know how much more time you have. Yeah.
Alex, you have to create office hours standard time now.
Well, I mean, you'll see that we're starting to introduce Zulu, which is Greenwich Mean Time. You'll just see Z at the end of things, and so that's the Greenwich Mean Time. And so we'll in Pixel Core we were all the meetings were in Zulu. We didn't give meeting times in local things, and so we're slowly moving that direction.
Do we also get rid of AM PM during that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I'm doing it gently, but we'll keep by the end of the year. It'll all be just in Greenwich Mean Time. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, to add on to something John said, like we all tend to go live about the same time. I think that's because that's when our viewers are online. I choose the time for my live streams based on what the YouTube statistics metrics actually say, and I think because we have very similar audiences, it's probably roughly around the same time.
Yeah, that's good. Next question.
Taylor Sunderhouse from Cincinnati, Ohio. What are minimum qualifications to have the redistricting feature available on your YouTube channel, having the ability to redirect people to another channel?
What's required? Is that available to everyone?
I'm not sure about that.
Not sure. Yeah.
According to YouTube, it's 1,000 subscribers and no community guideline strikes. Just Googled it.
There you go.
But just to keep in mind, based on that question there, having the ability to redirect people to another channel, that other channel needs to allow people to redirect to them. So that would be one of the requirements there.
Yeah. Next question.
Taylor's back with a question. Besides pushing viewers to other channels for discovery, what are some of the other benefits to redirecting?
Anyone has I mean, I think that the big one is discovery. I mean, that is and where we've seen it in Twitch, by the way, is really big gamers spreading the wealth. You know, so they'll when we've seen that type of thing or connecting those channels, it's a really large gamer that has millions of followers, and they're helping, you know, the next people that they approve of, that they are partnered with, and some of them, yeah, they're really partnered with. so anyway, we'll get too deep into that, but so they're kind of investing in those folks, and so they're taking their audience and they're focusing a huge number of people at a specific person who has got great content, but people don't know about them yet, and that has been extremely effective, and it allows them to kind of build a bit of a posse that then allows them to amplify things. So it's a really smart thing to do if you have a lot of followers, is to build a network of other creators that you can pass back and forth, and you're on their stuff and you're supporting their stuff, and they support your stuff, and it really creates a huge amplification. It's what a lot of social folks that have done well. I feel like in the beginning, a lot of them did it without a lot of calculation. A lot of the ones that I know just like each other. They just like hanging out with each other. I don't think they think about it, but there are definitely on some platforms, they are really scientific about how they pass that stuff back and forth. I think in YouTube we're a little less scientific yet, but I think that you start look at TikTok and some of the other ones, and they've got that down to a really hard science. Go ahead, Doug.
A lot of it has to do with monetization as well. You can't really monetize if you're streaming on somebody else's channel, but if you bring people into your own, then you can actually bring in the revenue. So for people who are actually living on YouTube or whatever, you want to have people on your own channel.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah, exactly what Doug said. I was quite keen on not streaming everything on my channel, for example. Any super chats and stuff that came in, it just didn't feel right for that to sit on me. Since everyone's giving their time for free to do this, it only seemed fair to push that money around, definitely.
Yeah. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael has a question, and he wants to know, how did you manage communications across so many streamers?
Short answer is barely. So again, experiment and limited time for all of us. We never set up any actual audio comms channel. Everything was handled over Discord for the preparation and for grabbing people during the day. So certainly something we would probably improve for the future, to get Unity or something similar in people's ears, just so you can always contact each person if you really have to. But in general, we all felt like we were taking care of our own content pretty well, and we were pretty happy about that. We understood how the bouncing between channels would work. So we felt like it was good enough just to go for it this time and see what happens.
Yeah, go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, we're kind of unique in that we are actually the content creators. We are YouTubers already, and so all of us have an understanding how all that works. And so we're coordinating all this would take a lot less effort than it would if we were working in any other group of people.
Right. Potentially the last question for the hour. Go ahead. Next question.
And it's from Douglas Carmichael. What tools did you use to manage the back-end cloud infrastructure?
Go ahead, Jonas.
This is a question where sometimes you get like really great and awesome complicated answers. We are really boring in that way. We use the standard tools in a standard way because we really optimize everything for stability and consistency. So if John calls me tomorrow again and is like, hey, I would like to do the same thing again, it looks exactly the same. We are able to provide the same stable feed again. There is a lot of AWS in the background, a lot of probably over a year of experience and experimenting with the different services and finding out which service works in its standard way the best. And then monitoring is mostly CloudWatch.
And one more question. A couple questions are now slipping in. Go ahead. The next question.
Okay, Chris Widener, Lafayette, Indiana.
Better is, I think, the word there.
Is the setup fundamentally better from simulcasting to all the channels involved?
Yeah, go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I think it's probably better to do it this way because one of the goals for this was to help some of the channels who are a little smaller to gain subscribers. And if we were all simulcasting to each other's channels, those who didn't have as many viewers aren't going to receive the benefit of being redirected from one to another. So we were very clear at the outset that we wanted to do this to try and help those channels grow.
Next question.
And it's from Courtney Gooden on our panel here, Hollywood, California. Are any of you planning on going to a in-person venue like Vid Summit in September?
Go ahead, Jonas.
It's probably not directed at me, but I just come back from an in-person event in Hamburg, the Hamburg Open. And I must say, hanging out with a lot of people on Zoom is really cool, but also being able to talk to like the top tier in our industry and just walk onto them and be able to talk to them for 30 minutes is really great. And one difference I found between Zoom communication and being there on the booth, contact us pricing doesn't exist. You just walk in mostly and are like, so how much is it? And you finally get an answer where sometimes for a lot of companies it takes a while. So, and I really look forward to the next in-person events.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, IBC is something in September that I plan on heading to, and I think Jonas will be there too. Him and I have been chatting for a couple of years now, pre-meeting on office hours here about all sorts of fun stuff, and it'll be really cool to.
Now we're hoping, we're just gonna put it out there. We're hoping that you guys might be the boots on the ground for us, covering IBC for us if you're open to it. Okay, you don't maybe just an hour or two, just wandering around, showing us.
Might be able to spare an hour or two.
Yeah, that's all. You don't have to take over or anything. Just give us your 2 cents. It'd be really fun. There's so many things. I find IBC to be so fascinating because it's so different than NAB. There's a whole bunch of European companies that don't make it to NAB. They just can't afford to. And so it's a whole different, and then there's some that have like a little booth at NAB and a massive booth at IBC, and there's extra comms. There's like these weird Dante comms out of Czechoslovakia, and there's all this other stuff that you just don't see in the United States. And so it's worth covering. Hopefully we'll be able to find enough people in Europe to cover IBC. It'll be interesting. Next question.
And it's from John Barker, Malmo, Sweden. And he wants to know, can we hire BSCMP Global for Stream Day 23?
Go ahead, Jonas.
Yeah, I'll send you a quote later. I think we can make that work. It was a blast for us to work with all the different streamers, and it's great to have people that actually look good in the video working with them, because often we get a lot of webcam setups, and having professional quality video and audio just makes a lot of fun.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I'm willing to pay double what I paid this year. So, Jonas, get that invoice sent to me.
I'd value it twice the price. That's great. All right. John, Jonas, Doug, thank you so much for coming and sharing what you guys have learned and what you did. Really amazing work. And, I think that it's one of the things that's really fun about what we're doing here is this is about to become the big game. Like all this virtual production and everything else is about to become the thing that really drives live, production and everything else. And you don't get to say very often, I was there when it started. And I saw these companies that become really big, and we know them and we hang out with them and, but it's really fun because I know that all of you are doing stuff that's going to be, cutting edge, and really pushing the whole thing forward. And we're going to see this get a lot bigger. And so it's really, an honor to have you guys here talking about it right now because we'll remember it in a couple of years, I'm sure. So anyway, thanks for joining us. And thanks to the producers for all the great questions. Thanks to the panelists. I can't do this without you, and we can't do it without the behind the scenes folks that are making all of this happen. And you'll see their names here in a second. It's a lot of work that they do every single day. So just really amazing work. And remember a reminder that we'll be covering NAMM tomorrow. And we're going to see how that goes. And I'm pretty excited about spending a little bit of my Saturday watching and seeing how this all comes together. And so stay tuned for that. We have a lot going on. At WWDC, it's going to be a lot of fun next week, as well as Cinegear. So stay tuned for all of those things. And now we're going to jump into After Hours. Mitchell. Rosebud.
Nice.
Bye-bye, Mitchell.
Stop it.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you.